So, Jai to all of you. Today we have with us a very special friend, a very special person whose life is devoted to Baba Sahib's mission since his very young age. He's a very near and dear friend. He has a very unique educational profile. He has studied in Hyderabad Public School, and after that he has finished his engineering graduation from IIT Bombay, and also his master's degree from IIM Calcutta. And he's somebody who has having this beautiful and very unique educational degrees in his pocket. But that's his professional sort of an introduction. He has also worked in the banks, and he's a business consultant. Now he's helping a lot of young people to understand the new technologies, particularly what we can say the Internet of Things and artificial intelligence and so on and so forth. He is not only had excelled in the professional career, venturing from the banking sector all the way up to the technology sector. From his childhood and when he was growing up, his mind has always been tuned to what's happening in the Ambedkarite movement, and he's somebody who is not afraid to call a spade, whether it's a political party or it's an Ambedkarite organization. And he has that audacity, that confidence to talk the truth to its power. And also, he's a good organizer who has set up a few good initiatives, particularly focused on the youths. But he's also an analyst. He goes into the deeper social problems. He goes into the deeper economic problems. He goes into the very very difficult. He goes into difficult problems and analyzes it, like political problems facing the society. Uh, as we know that these are very changing times and uncertain times, we have no idea where we are heading forward to. We can only get a glimpse of the things to come in the future. And one of the areas that is concerning our community, the community at large, maybe our country and the world, is the opportunities in employment, in education, because they are shrinking. New grounds are opening up, and we do not have a means to really gauge what is happening. So, without taking much of your time, I would like to request my dear friend Jayant Ramteke to talk about opportunities and challenges in the field of education and employment in 21st century, because that's very relevant, that we cannot go back to the old sort of professions, think through them, and in the 21st century for the Bahujan Samaj. So, very warm welcome, Brother Jayant. It's very lovely to see you and very lovely to have you. And now I would like to request you to begin with your talk, followed by a question and answer. We will have a question and answer. Jayant, brother.
Shabim, to all the participants of this lovely talk organized by my dear friend Mangesh. Uh, I know this is a summer afternoon, the Corona time, and everyone is having a leisure time. Especially today is Sunday, and I thank you all to join for having joined this session today, leaving aside your leisurely other work. So, thanks to Mangesh for a lovely introduction that he has given for me. Uh, so, I have been working for last 20 years in the banking and financial services industry. Uh, so, based on my vast experience of working in the industry and uh, whatever experience I have gathered in my academic life, I have been working all along for, especially among the youth, to make them aware about educational and the career opportunities uh, in various fields. So, based on that experience, I have developed some of my views, which are which I try to share with most of our on whatever platform I get. And I thought, like, in this changing times, this is the time when we need, as a society, we need to you this particular subject where education and employment, which is very crucial to each of us, and especially for us, education is the like foundation of all our like life and a career. So with that context, we have decided to talk about the education and the employment opportunities in 21st century. So that's the topic. I am not. I mean, like I am not a a university lecturer who will give a talk, a monologue for long, and then leave it at that. This is going to be more of an interactive session. So I will talk for next uh, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and then we will open up this talk, and then we'll have more questions, and then and a Q&A session after that. Okay. So, friends, we all know Mangesh mentioned about that. These are the these are the changing times and changing very very fast. Okay. So I remember just a fortnight ago, I had delivered a lecture. I have taken a session on the same topic just a fortnight ago, and in last 1 week there have been so many changes. Okay. So in India, the labor laws which have been existing for ages. Okay, so there were labor laws during the times of Britishers, and then Baba Sahib became a labor minister in the year 1942, and he brought in a lot of reforms into the labor laws, and those laws and a lot of subsequent laws which were added to that. All of those laws which were in existence for last, let's say, 70, 80 years, have been changed overnight last week. I mean, three state governments and maybe more state governments, okay, have decided to do away with those laws. Okay. So that's why I'm saying the times are changing very, very fast. And we never know how the world is going to look like after this corona shutdown. And we firstly when the corona shutdown is going to get over, that itself is very uncertain. Okay. So just to give a kind of a background to this topic, you see this the human age can be divided into different buckets. Okay, so I would say the first bucket is like around say 1 lakh years till 10,000 years ago, which is called a first age. Okay, that first age, human beings just learned to light a fire, okay, and started talking, like they created a language. Okay, and this went on for like around 90,000 years, and maybe even before that, probably there was no language, okay, or the fire. But these two major changes were brought in, and for 90,000 years, nothing changed. Okay, so until 10,000 before 10,000 years, it's called an agriculture age, and that age between 10,000 years BC to 5,000 BC, agriculture age. Okay, what was invented was human beings learned to settle down at one place and started basically plowing land, and they started developing some settlements. Okay, again 5,000 years, not not much changed. Okay, between 5,000 years to let's say around 1600 BC. Okay, this age is the third age. Okay, and this third age is major changes that happened in this age. The beginning of this age is uh, the human beings invented writing and wheels. Okay, so wheel was invented, and then start the fourth age, which is the beginning of the scientific revolution, which is from let's say 1600 AD, okay, to till date and in future. So some people call this as a age of robotics and artificial intelligence. I would call this as a age of a scientific revolution. Okay. So what has happened between 1600, let's say 1950, 1960? Again, yes, there were a lot of changes. There are a lot of scientific innovations and inventions that happened during this 300, 400 years. But you see the changes that have happened, let's say from 1950, okay, or maybe even if you narrow down last 30 years, okay, when we went to a college, there was internet was there, but it was not so popular. So in the institute, internet was there, but it was very limited. Okay, past 30 years, if you see the changes, okay, these changes probably are, I mean, much more and much bigger than the changes that happened for, let's say, like last 1 lakh years, right, of a human life. So that's the pace of the changes that are happening. Okay, and in future, with the advance of artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, IoT, whatnot, we can't even guess as to where the world is going to be. We never know. I mean, sometimes it looks difficult for a human imagination. So all those movies are being formed, fiction novels are being written as to how the world is going to be. Okay, so it is so uncertain that what the future is going to look like. So in this such a changing age, my friends, we as a society, and so when I mean we again, let me be very clear. I mean, we are in general talking about the Bahujan Samaj, okay? And why only Bahujan Samaj? Why not the whole humanity? Because in Indian context, especially, the other non-Bahujans, they are basically strong enough to take care of themselves. Okay, so like although we have all our compassion and sympathy for them, they are self-sufficient to handle their problems. So it is really not necessary for people like you and me to worry about their problems. Okay, they can take care of themselves. So it is the Bahujans, okay, of whom we are going to talk about when I say we, okay, and especially among the Bahujans, we are going to talk about the problems of the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes. Okay, so we have seen how the world is changing very fast. Okay, whereas on the other hand, if you look at us as a society, okay, so I would like start talking about our own kind of a history, let's say from starting of the Ambedkarite movement, okay, the last 2-3 generations, okay. So what has happened is last let's say post independence, we got all these constitutional rights, okay. Our people for the thousands of years who had no rights, had no civil rights, had no right to education, had no basic rights. Okay, they constitutionally they were given these rights. Okay? Rightly so, they are long overdue. Okay, and we started making use of these constitutional rights, and they were on two fronts. Okay, the way they helped us were on two fronts. Firstly, we started taking education. Okay, so for the first time, like Baba Sahib was the first matriculate among the scheduled castes in Maharashtra. But so from then onwards, like our people started going to school, and then we started going to the universities, colleges, and we came up with people who had their degrees and the postgraduates. While this was happening, what was in India, there were also of happenings on the industry front, okay, in the economic front. Okay. So in 1950s, 60s, and up to 70s, on the economic front, India was building its industry. Okay, so the basic and the heavy industries, which is like infrastructure, is kind of a solid rock based on which the economy develops. Okay, and none of that existed in India. So Indian government that time, the private players, the private corporates which we see were really not there. And even if they were there, private corporates were not interested in taking this responsibility of building the heavy infrastructure. Okay, so finally this responsibility came to a government. Okay, and government with a lot of thought adopted this mixed economy model where the government would build the infrastructure, and then slowly as the economy develops, it would then be passed on to the private players. Okay, so that is what happened. And in this process, a lot of jobs were created. Okay, and they were created in the semi-government sector where government participation was there. what we call as PSUs. Okay? There are a lot of jobs in the PSU. There are a lot of jobs in the government because the country was growing, the government size was growing. So there are a lot of jobs that were creating in the government ecosystem. Okay? And at the same time, our people had started going to the schools and the colleges and the universities. Okay? So the on one side, the demand for the jobs was going up. On the other side, the supply for the trained labor also was going up. Okay? And that way, this both demand and supply were able to meet each other's requirements, and that's how we got the opportunities. Our fathers' generations, okay, starting from 1960s onwards, or even before that, we got all the opportunities of employment and the education. Okay, so this good time, I would say, in our whatever short history continued until, let's say, 1990s, or maybe late 90s. Okay, and we all know that things started changing since 1991. Okay, post the policy of LPG, which was implemented by the government. Okay, so post independence and post this LPG policy implementation, what has happened is the government slowly started privatization of the PSUs. Okay, so among the first PSUs that were privatized were some of these big giants like IPCL, where I worked. It was my first job after IIT. So IPCL, Maruti Udyog, BSNL, Hindustan Zinc, ITC Hotels, and all these. So they are big companies which provided huge employment opportunities for our people. Okay? And all these companies were then sold out to the private players. Okay? So IPCL, I know the case of IPCL because I had my first job there. It is a very interesting thing to know that just the land holding of the IPCL, okay, the land of their factories, cost of that was much more than the cost for which, the price at which, Reliance bought it over. Okay? So the cost of all other assets, like the plant, machinery, and all other tangible and non-tangible assets, intangible assets, leave that apart. Even whatever price Reliance paid to IPCL did not cover the cost of the land. So that's how this privatization began, and it still continues. We already have a lot of other companies, good companies in the list of government, and they are awaiting the privatization. Okay? So that story is still continuing. Secondly, the other development that has happened is hitherto the government was just trying to privatize its PSUs, okay, and there were certain sectors which were prohibited to the private players, okay, and one of the sector was the defense production, okay? And this defense production is a huge sector. Government spending on defense production is huge, okay. So I am not exactly sure how many companies, how many ordnance factories are there, maybe around 50 to 60. Someone can correct that. All the 60 ordnance factories were all run by government. Okay. Now, the government has decided to pass this defense production to the private players. And recently, I think just 2 days back, they also taken a decision that the FDI investment in the defense production is going to increase from 49% to 79%. Okay, so 79% FDI into defense production. Do you think in all these ordnance factories, thousands of people who got jobs in these factories, do you think that these people, investors who invest in these factories are going to continue with the reservations? No, of course they won't. Okay, and we are going to lose another set of thousands of those jobs. On the other hand, what is happening? While we are losing jobs which we enjoyed for last 30 years, on the other hand, we are seeing that there are these inefficient private players who are not able to run their companies properly, they took huge loans from the public sector banks. Okay, so uh, between 2014 to 2020, okay, so when this BJP government took over in center in 2014, the NPAs of all the banks put together were around 2.5 lakh crores. Okay, and now just 6 years after that, in year 2020, the NPAs have increased to more than 11 lakh crores. Okay, so it is an increase of 5 times. Okay, and during this period, the government has writing off these NPAs. Okay, so even recently they have taken a decision to write off NPAs to the tune of around 2.5 lakh crores. Okay, so what is government doing? On one hand, it is privatizing the profit making public sector companies. Okay, and on the other hand, it is it is kind of nationalizing the loss making private companies. Okay, so it is basically nationalization of losses and privatization of profit making companies. Okay, this is another big game that is happening in this country. Okay, in the name of reforms or whatever developments, they are simply country. Okay, and who is getting hit because of all these developments? It's the Bahujan Samaj, because neither do we have a capital, and whatever little employment we had, that employment is going on getting decreased, right? So these are the developments that have been happening for past 30-40 years. Okay, so while this is happening, okay, where are we? What are we doing? Okay, that's really interesting to me. Okay, so while we enjoyed the benefits of reservations and got jobs in various private in the various public sector companies and in the government for last 30-40 years, okay, since the changes started happening, okay, post 1991 till 2020, in this last 30 years, where are we? Okay, have we changed? Now that's very interesting story. Okay, and my focus of today's talk is going to be that. Have we changed? The country is changing. The economy has changed. The global economic forces have changed. But have we changed as a society? Okay, and the answer to that is no. Okay, we haven't changed much, or adaptability. The situation is, I would not say we are totally, not adaptable, but I would say we are very slow in adapting ourselves to the situation. Okay, so I call this as getting time trapped. Okay, so I think our society is time trapped in the decades of 60s, 70s, and 80s. Okay, so while the things have changed, okay, we are still in the mode of those government jobs and the PSUs. Okay, and why I'm bringing this up, because in year 2020, okay, when there are literally no government jobs, okay, literally the recruitment in the PSU has almost freezed. 90% of the engineers and the professionals who pass out from the universities are in our society are preparing for the government jobs. Okay? Whereas the fact is those government jobs are not there, literally. Even if they are there, they are just minuscule part of the total employment opportunities. Okay? And so this is the main problem which I will come to and discuss in depth, because this is the crux of this talk and a take home of this talk. Okay? So let's see what has changed in the sector of education and employment, in last 30 years. Okay, and what are going to be the future trends. Okay, so in the sector of education, what has changed? So in education, we have seen that government has started withdrawing from the education sector, and it has started passing on the education sector to the private players. So we see in last 30 years, there are so many engineer professional colleges which have started mushrooming. Okay, so we all us, we know that the number of engineering colleges and the colleges for other professional courses that have come up. Okay, and all of these are going into the private place. Okay, then what is happening is okay. Now a very interesting a number. Okay, so in India there are nearly 15 lakh engineers which are being produced every year coming out of the engineering colleges. 15 lakh, mind you. Okay? And out of this 15 lakh engineers that the engineering colleges churn out in India, only around 15% of the engineering graduates are employable. Okay. So by that what I mean is only 15% of engineering graduates have the skills which are required by the industry. Okay. So nearly 85% of the engineers remain unemployable or unemployed after they complete their education. Okay. So what does that mean? And who is getting affected big time because of this? Okay. So among those 85% engineers who pass out from the engineering colleges who stay unemployed, who are going to be those guys? Okay. It's going to be mostly the students from the Bahujan Samaj. Okay. Then since and why are these people not getting jobs? Those 85% people, because the skill sets that are required by the industry to employ these engineers, okay, are not at all there in these students. Okay, why they are not there? Because of various reasons. Okay, the first reason is the syllabus that the universities have is totally outdated. Okay, it is not in tune with the requirements of the industry. Okay. Secondly, most of these private colleges and the institutions they are not really geared up in terms of the infrastructure and the qualified faculty to take provide the kind of teaching that should be given to the students. Okay, that's another reason. Third thing is the students themselves are not so much motivated enough. Okay, and it's overall problem of the Indian education system, where even in the engineering colleges, it is the rote learning which is given important and not basically acquiring the skills. Okay, now this is again way different from other Western countries where learning is given more importance than just the rote learning. Okay, so the learning and acquiring skills, that is what is not happening in India even now, and therefore we are producing this a big chunk of unemployed people and throwing them into open market. Okay, and this is true not only with the engineering graduates, this is true with every other profession. Okay, and so there is a gap between the industry requirements and what universities are able to provide. Okay, and there are some private institutions, okay, some training centers which are trying to fill up this gap. Okay, so there is an opportunity for them, a business opportunity for them, and these institutions, since they are into 100% into business, okay, and have no to do any social service, they charge a bomb the students. Okay, so where they should have been charging a fees of around, like, let's say 10,000, 20,000, they charge 1 lakh, 2 lakh rupees to the students to acquire some add-on skills so that they become eligible to get employment in the industry. Okay, and again, these institutions, these private institutions, are beyond the reach of the Bahujan students. Okay, so that is a trap in which our students find themselves today in the year 2020. What is happening on a technology front? Okay, so on a technology front, there are a lot of changes which are affecting the way the education is being imparted in this country and globally, not only in India. Okay, and what are the changes? Now we have seen today. We are conducting this online session. Okay, and there are a lot of other people who started doing this. So this is going to be a trend. Okay, the schools and the colleges and the institutions, okay, are going to adopt this online learning mode on an increasing basis in the future. Okay? Another mode that you're going to start is anytime, anywhere learning. That means you need not come to the university, you need not come to a school, you can sit at your home and anytime, anywhere you can start learning. Okay. So the technology is enabling all of these provisions. Third thing that is affecting the way the education is going to be imparted is adaptive learning using techniques of artificial intelligence. Okay. Now this is a growing field. It's growing very fast. Okay. So by this, what I mean is uh, art- the techniques of artificial intelligence and the machine learning are going to be used increasingly in imparting the education so that the whole learning process is adaptive. Okay. So what does that mean is, so there are already companies, there are already countries which have started this kind of teaching where the students are first assessed as to where they stand, what are their inclinations, what kind of career they are fit for, what is their aptitude, what are their interests. So first the students are assessed based on the techniques of artificial intelligence, and then a career path for them is set. Okay. So they are put into a right kind of like education mode so that they have their interest in what they learn. Whereas in India, in a rote learning kind of environment, the students' interest doesn't matter. Okay. What matters is whether the, the children are going to get job after they pass out from the university or no. Okay. That's the only criteria. Yeah. And that's also affecting the moral and the motivation of the students. Okay, but this is again going to change with the use of adaptive learning technology techniques and technology in the area of education. Okay. uh, what are the kind of skills that are required for the 21st century, okay, at a workplace? I mean, a lot of people can interpret this in different ways, but the four very important skills that I think of are creativity, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking. Okay, these are kind of life-saving skills that are required, that are mandatory for any professionals in the 21st century. Okay, and the Indian education just misses all of these skills. Okay, the creativity, collaboration, okay, communication, and the critical thinking. So in future, any school that we send our children to, okay, or any schools that we start of our own, we have to ensure that all these skills, okay, whether these skills are taught in the school or whether these skills are imparted to our children at the homes, okay, developing these skills is very, very mandatory for our children to, stand on their own future. Okay. Then importance of data science, machine learning, and coding. Okay, these are some of the skills of future. Okay, so when I say now sitting here, when I talk about data science, machine learning, and programming, coding. Okay, a lot of people must be thinking that, oh, these are the skills of engineers. Okay, I am a doctor, or I am a, like, a humanities professional. Why do I need skills like data science, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and coding? Friends, take this from me. Okay, all of these skills are going to be skills of very
Uh, Sorry, it seems that there is some problem with connectivity at Jan's end. We'll wait for his coming back online. His video is frozen. He will be just right back. I think some problem at his end, and we can hope that We'll be just right back. But as we can understand that, yeah, he's back. Jayant is back. Welcome back, Jayant. Welcome back, Jayant. Welcome back.
Yes, so we were talking about this skills of 21st century. Okay, so I was talking about those four skills: creativity, collaboration, communication, critical thinking, and then there are some of the technology skills which are going to be very generic and not just applicable to the engineers. Okay, and those are techniques of machine learning, techniques of data science, and programming. Okay. Uh, coming back to the employment opportunities in the 21st centuries. So while I was just reading somewhere, and it says that the half life of any professions or any jobs has come down to now 50 years. Okay, so within a span of 50 years, half of the jobs that currently exist are going to be extinct. Okay, so whatever jobs we have currently, within next 50 years, half of these jobs are going to disappear. Okay, they are no more going to be there, and we have already seen this. If you see the beginning of the 20th century, a lot of employment was in the sector of agriculture. Okay, so in US, like nearly 40% of the US workforce used to work in the sector of agriculture in 1900. Okay, and after 50 years in 1950, that proportion of agriculture jobs came down to 2%. From 40%, it came down to 2%. Okay. Also, between 1950 to year 2000, okay, nearly 30% of the workforce in USA was in the sector of manufacturing. Okay, and within 50 years, that number again came down from 30% to 10%. Okay, so most of the manufacturing sector jobs also vanished. Okay, so the half life of the jobs, the current jobs, it has come down to 50 years. So in 50 years, half of the jobs are going to vanish. Okay, we must keep this mind, and we haven't kept that in mind. So I will come to that problem later. But we should remember these numbers. So whatever jobs we are seeing today, we cannot be complacent and assume that the jobs are going to remain forever and are going to be available to us even in near future. Near future means like next 10 years, 20 years. No, they are not going to be available. They are going to change. Okay. Then there is going to be advent of robots. Okay. And mind you, already there are a lot of companies which are using robots on mass scale. Okay. So the company like there's some of the shoes manufacturing companies and Amazon. Okay, they use robots in like thousands. Okay, so these robots are used to pack their books and for shoemaking. They are the robots are manufacturing shoes and all that. Okay, so robots are going to be introduced in the industry big time. Okay, and the nature of the jobs is going to change. So now some other people have apprehension whether robots are going to take up our jobs, and whether all our jobs, human beings are going to become like totally unemployed and totally not worthy of finding meaningful jobs. No, that is not going to happen. Okay, what is going to happen is robots will come. Okay, but robots are not going to replace all the tasks within a job. Okay, so within a particular job, there will be some tasks which are more of a mechanical kind. Okay, which can be replaced by a robot. Okay, but there are for any job there are some tasks which can be done only by the human beings. Okay, the jobs which require creativity. That's what in these four skills that I talked about. The jobs which will require a creativity, a critical thinking, collaboration. These kind of jobs would never be replaced by the robots. Okay, So we need not worry that whether like an advent of robot is going to like take away all our jobs. No, it is not going to take away all our jobs. But yes, the nature of the jobs is not going to remain same. Okay. So when the robots are introduced, okay, when the techniques of machine learning and the data science are and the artificial intelligence are going to be introduced, the nature of the jobs is going to change. Okay. The number may not change. Okay. The number will stay in tune with the available, I mean the number of human beings who are ready to do jobs. The number will remain same, but the nature of jobs is going to change. Okay. So what does that mean? That means that in coming future, the way we are doing our jobs, the way the kind of skills that we have now, okay, if we keep those same skills, okay, and the same whatever we have learned on job, if we are not able to adapt ourselves, if we are not ready to upskill ourselves, then we become misfit, okay, for the future jobs which are going to the jobs which are going to change. Okay. So while having whatever skills we have, we should also be in a position to learn things and learn very quickly. Okay. Because all these changes are going to happen very rapidly. They're not going to wait. We are not going to get 5 years, 10 years to learn something. You know, we might get, quick 6 months, 1 year, so that we learn a new skill and get adapted for a new job that is going to come our way. Okay. So friends, this is going to happen. Okay. What I'm talking is a reality. It is not a fiction. Okay. It's happening now. Okay. It's just a matter of time when it comes to us. Okay. Yeah. So what would be a general skills that I think we should start preparing our kids, okay, and also the workforce which is young among us. Okay. So some of the skills that I think of are soft skills, okay, which is what matters a lot. Uh, then good communication skills, which is a part of our soft skills. Foreign language skills. The world has become a global village. There are opportunities. Mangesh Bhai is one of the global citizens. He knows opportunities like world over. So there are opportunities everywhere. We need not stick to the jobs available only in India. Okay, so learn foreign languages. Learn skills in programming. Okay, so learning programming skills. Don't think because you are a PhD in social science or say MPhil, MS in social sciences, you don't need to learn, or you are a doctor, you don't need to learn programming. No. Okay, if you are a researcher, if you are into a scientific research or any other research, you need to necessarily know the programming skills. So learn those skills. Okay, be abreast with the latest computer and IT skills. Uh, Trade specific vocational skills. Okay, so as I said, while some of the jobs are going to get extinct, there are going to be new jobs which are going to get created. Okay, we have to have a look at what are the jobs that are going to get created in next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the line. Okay, we already seen there are a lot of jobs in the service industry that have got created in last 10 years. Okay, so were there pizza delivery boys 10 years back? No, they were not there. They are there now. Okay, were there the books delivery boys, the Amazon and the Flipkart delivery boys? Were the jobs there earlier? No, they were not there. Their jobs are postman. Are the postmen been there now? No, they are not there. Okay, so the jobs are going to change. So we have to keep in mind as to which are the sectors where a new job opportunities are going to come. Okay, have a visionary, a deliberation on it. Point out those sectors, okay, and try to build our skills, okay, not just from the employment perspective, also from the entrepreneurship perspective. Okay, so a lot of our young guys can start finding out new opportunities in those sectors. Okay, and mind you, while the technology is unsettling a lot of us, okay, but technology and especially for the Bahujans is a game changer. Okay, because technology has no caste, so to say. Okay, by nature. I mean, when that technology gets Indianized, then again, the caste will come. Okay, but as such, it is kind of a equalizer. Okay, so we should start taking advantage of the latest technology that is thrown at us to get a first movers advantage and enter into all these new activities that are being created. Okay, so this is all. I mean, like the futuristic outlook and the plan that we should have. Uh, Having said this, okay, the sad reality is far from being prepared for the coming future. We are still entrapped in the year decades of 1960s, 70s, and 80s. Now, let me come to a very uh, candid discussion that I wanted to have. I know this is little kind of aggressive. It looks very aggressive to some people because our people want to stay in a very comfortable zone. They don't want to be challenged, and they don't want someone to talk about the realities. Okay, and I have faced this lot of friction from the society. Okay, for talking these facts. Okay, so, my friends, I will share some of the insights that I have got, okay, from one project that I did with the government of Maharashtra. This was a training program that one of the Institute of Industry Department of Government of Maharashtra we had conducted. We as a technology partner, training partners, along with the MCD, we conducted training in the area of artificial intelligence, data science. IT automation, cyber security, IoT, all high-tech courses. We conducted this training free of charge. I mean, the government paid, of course, for boys and girls across Maharashtra. Okay, and my insights. Okay, while having interviewed nearly 1,000 students. Okay, from Gondia and Bhandara to Mumbai. Okay, my experience was this. Okay? Nearly 80% of our professionally qualified students, be it engineers or MBAs or any other graduates and postgraduates, are preparing for the government jobs. Okay, government jobs like railways. Okay, the banking clerks, the professional officers, or the MPSC, or the some of the PSC jobs, or very few people in the UPSC and many people in the MPSC. Okay, 90%, literally like 70 to 80% of the students, there are very few students who have never touched a government preparation as such. Okay, now why are they doing this? Are there that many number of jobs in the government? Are really the prospects for the jobs in the future so bright that all our youngsters are spending so much time in the government job preparation? No, that is not. I mean, like that is not the case. They are doing this out of compulsion. Okay, they are doing this because of some kind of a pressure. They are doing this because they are not aware of the opportunities. They are doing this because they are not getting proper guidance on the time. Okay? They are doing this because they don't have a roadmap of the development of their future career. Okay, and in this process, what is happening is a lot of our young boys. Okay, and there is some kind of plan. Okay, by some some guys like from the government side where they kept on increasing the upper age limit from first 31 to 35 to now I think in Maharashtra the government jobs max age limit is 42 years. Okay, so this age limit has been increasing and our boys are continuing their preparation for the government jobs until they reach the age of 35 or maybe even more than that. So in this process, what is happening is all these engineers or the professionally qualified people, okay, while they prepare for government jobs for 4 5 years, what happens in the 5 years? They all their professional skills get wiped out. Okay, so if you are an engineer, firstly in the engineering colleges, not many people learn a technology in a real sense. Okay, so they just somehow complete the degree and whatever exams they pass and they come out. So as such, to start with, they don't have the proper skills as an engineer. On top of that, if they spend those 4 years, 5 years preparing for the government jobs, whatever skills these guys acquired, okay, as an engineer, all of those get wiped out. Then what happens? Then this guy is literally as good or as bad as a non-qualified, non-educated guy. Because if he goes like that to the industry for a job, okay, No one is going to even give him an entry for the interview. They are not even going to get a calls for the interview. So what happens? So he is not, after 3 4 years, he is not, most of these guys are not in a position to get job in the private sector, even if they try. Since they have all the doors for the private sector jobs get closed, they again come back to the government job preparation. Okay. So it's like people who have got trapped. Okay. They try to come out of it, but they have no means to come out. And this is the sad story of 70 to 80% of our people. Okay. And why this is happening? It's not, I would not blame these young guys. I know that they are the ones who have to be looked at with the compassion and with the kind of elderly advice we have to give them. Okay. But the mindset of our people also has to change. Okay. All our parents have to realize that we are no more in the decades of 60s, 70s, and 80s where you are going to get those government jobs in plenty. No. As I said that the half life of all the jobs is 50 years. In 50 years, everything changes. So if you start counting years from 80s and 90s, we have already crossed 30, 40, 50 years. Right? So in this 50 years, all the jobs which are available until 1990s are no more there. We should accept that. And we have to move on, which is what we are not in a position to do at the moment. Okay. All our people still think that the way our parents have got jobs, okay, all our children also are going to get a similar jobs in the government sector. No, I mean, I would be a first person to love that. If that was going to happen, why would I be in so much worry? I would be very happy that, oh, come on, like all our guys are going to get jobs in government sector, but no, they're not going to get. That's the whole problem. Okay, so therefore, my friends, we need to change. Okay, we need to get tuned to the year 2020. Okay, so in year 2020, what is the situation? Okay, how is the world going to change, especially after the corona pandemic? How the world forces, global economic forces, global industry, how is it going to change? Okay, and already changes have started, coming up in India. Okay, in US, globally, every country. Okay, things are going to change very fast. We all of us have to start getting geared up to this changing situation. Okay, and we have to come out of that mode of the government sector jobs. Okay, Mangesh, I had like carried out a SWOT analysis of a society. Okay, I'm not going to present that. Maybe some other time. Okay, it might take some more time. I don't want to do that, but like I have covered most of those points in my talk. Okay, so I had like in this analysis I have kind of listed down what our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and the threats that we are facing as a society. Okay, that's what analysis. Maybe some other time I'll cover. I'm not going to cover that now. Okay, but it's a very interesting analysis that I had. Okay, I think like I have already uh, taken 1 hour. Probably in 5 10 minutes, I'll just try to summarize. Uh, my friends, basically, I don't my talk open ended. Okay, I want people to take away some insights from this. Okay, and what are those? What is the take home? Okay, so what I think is uh, firstly, the take home that we all should carry back is we need to come out of our mentality which looks for a secure jobs which are full of security. Okay, so what that means is once I join a company or join any particular job for next 35 years, I'm not going to be touched. I'm going to spend 35 years in the same company, probably in the same department. Okay, and not don't have to upskills yourself, nothing like you have a full security. Now those jobs are not going to be there anymore. Okay, let us all keep that in mind. Okay, that is the thing of the past. Okay, unless you join some government department or maybe you become a police officer, and then you keep doing the policing throughout your life. So those jobs may be very few. Okay, but most of the jobs are not going to be full of security. Okay, they are going to be full of insecurity. And I would say that insecurity, you should take it in a positive strides and consider that as a stimulus for your growth. Okay, when there is insecurity, you start growing. Okay, so you say wherever there is a security where nothing is going to change much, people don't grow. Okay, so insecurity is not necessarily a curse, right? It can be a stimulus to a growth. So let's accept that the future jobs are going to be full of insecurity, and let's start accepting the challenges. Okay, next is we have to accept a reality that government jobs are thing of the past. Okay, let's be very candid about that. Okay, if suppose someone we are going to have a question answer session. If you want to challenge me, you can challenge me on that front. Okay, students who prepare for the government job should do this preparation with a complete plan. Okay, by that what I mean is I am not discouraging people to go for a government jobs or go for the preparation of government jobs. But what I'm urging people to do is to have a plan. Okay, I know Mangesh Bhai, we were together preparing for the, our Babu's jobs he passed out. Okay, and like there has to be some plan. Okay, so I'm going to spend, let's say, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, max 4 years. Okay, I'm not recommend beyond that. These many years for the preparation. If I don't get through, okay, then I come back. Whatever vocation, whatever education I have taken, and then I start developing my skills, upskilling in that field. If you take more than 4 years, I would say like you're putting yourself into trouble. Okay, so have a plan if you want to go for a government job. Okay, don't go away and say that Ramtech is anti-government job. No, I'm not. Okay, if you get jobs, you become IAS officer within 2 years, 3 years, you are most welcome. Okay. Our students must start acquiring hands-on skills required by the market and the industry. Okay. Now, Mangesh, I know you are much more well-read than me. I was looking at this John Dewey's School of experimental learning, right?
Yeah.
He had started a school in University of Chicago. That school still exists. Okay, and I was just reading about that. Okay, very very interesting concept. Okay, so the school was started where they started imparting skills, hands-on skills. Okay, so a kid goes to a school, primary schools, and he starts learning some hands-on skills. Okay, so by the time he comes out of the university, he is not like some of those or our graduates and postgraduates who do not even know how to cook like me. Okay, so incidentally, my son Maitreya is staying in USA in Atlanta with one family. Okay, and that family is a very interesting family. So the husband is a white American, the lady, his wife, okay, is Indian. Okay, and Maitreya is staying with that family. They have a kid who is in 5th standard, so he's around 10 years old. Okay, and that 10 years old guy has a duty of cooking food for the whole family twice a day, twice a week.
Beautiful.
Okay, see the way they are making their children ready for for the future.
Beautiful.
Whereas my mother and my father ensured that I never enter a kitchen all my life. Okay, and I have become a lazy husband, which I still continue after reaching the age of 45.
That's a very candid confession, Jayan Bhai. We accept.
So we need to gear up and we need to start teaching our children these life-saving skills. So while your children are in school, okay, let them do some small odd jobs. Okay, if like they are in like say 7th standard, 8th standard, or even 12th standard, let them do jobs in the nearest mall near your house. So what? I mean, let him earn his first 100 rupees. Okay, the thrill that he will get. Okay, for earning that 100 rupees, well, I mean, there won't be any parallel to that, right? I mean, and the kind of skills he will acquire, those skills will take him heights. It will take him miles together in future. Okay, so we miss that. Our people, they do graduation, post graduation, double MA, triple MA, MPhil, PhD, but they don't acquire the skills to earn their livings. Okay, and then they come and say that no, I am like a PhD holder. Okay, or I am an engineer and whatever, and then I can't earn my own living. So is this? Okay, so we have to remember this. Okay, start imparting training or the skills to our children so that okay they will not come out of the university and say that I can't even earn my living. Okay, I'm little bit harsh. Mangesh knows that I'm not a soft spoken person. Okay, I'm a little bit harsh, but some of some of these things have to be like explained very clearly. Okay,
Yeah.
that's why I'm talking in these terms. Okay, youth should be ready to explore new locations across the world. We should learn this from the Brahmins. Okay, they are so adaptable. They are all over the world. Okay, we should learn this from the Jews. The kind of persecutions Jews faced during the Hitler's time. You know, these guys they adapted themselves. They went to different places. Okay, we should also learn at this Marwadi community. Okay, these people they went places. They are there everywhere. They went to the interiors of Tamil Nadu where no one speaks Hindi. Okay, and these Marwadis from Rajasthan they don't know English. Okay, but still these guys went to the different villages of Tamil Nadu and started doing their baniya business. They opened their shops. Okay, so they're adaptable. Why we should start learning from these guys also as to how to be adaptable and flexible. Okay, so in conclusion, I would say to survive in 21st century, self-help is the name of the game. Okay, we can't keep on blaming, the system, the government, our parents, what not. Everyone in the world will start blaming except ourselves. Okay, our kids, our students and our parents, we as a society, how to like stop doing that. Okay, we have to take charge of our life. Some of us, we who are in a position to start some educational institutions, some of us who are in a position to start our own companies, some entrepreneurs projects, we should start doing that. How long are we going to wait for our some other people to start open up businesses for us? Okay, uh, so yeah, I mean that is I think nutshell that I wanted to cover in this talk. So I think like we can have the session open now for the questions. Thank you
Jan,
all.
Jan bhai, it's wonderful. This is what happens when a man of so much experience and having seen so much of word speaks that in 1 hour you could take us through the historical sort of the developments, all the had changed, and to this right, the very moment that this humanity is going through an unprecedented change and uncertainties. I think you produced a very clear picture of the things to come vis-a-vis our Bahujan community and what we are doing, our attitudes and our mindsets, and how we need to break through those molds of past thinkings. As you said, that we are like trapped in the time capsule, that we are not able to break that balloon of time where we are just locking ourselves into and looking at the narrow opportunities and within our own subjective selves, instead of looking at the dynamic situation that is turning outside us. I think what you also created a very interesting picture of a community, particularly when you talked about this 50 lakh odd engineers which are there in our country, and 85% have no skills to be employed anywhere. I think that captures the status of the things, and 85% directly matches with the 85% of the Bahujan Samaj. So we can see how that goes with the caste system that we have inbuilt in our Indian society and Indian economy and Indian polity, and how that gets reflected in the opportunities in terms of education and employment. I think that was very beautifully put and explained, Jayan bhai. I think you also guided the students in terms of the directions that they can take, they can pursue, like develop their soft skills, learn the foreign languages, learn programming skills, irrespective of their backgrounds in arts or commerce. Anybody can do programming. You also pointed out a very unique direction for our students, which you are working for now last 2 years, about artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, robotics. Trade specific skills, very important. Identifying those trades which are going to last for next 20-30 years and learning those skills. I think that was wonderful. And I think one of the things that has remarkably stood out of your presentation today is that the technology has no caste. It's an open world. Anybody who is ready to give their time, give her time, her energies to it, they can really do wonders. And the world is full of examples of the people coming from the marginalized background and making a big headway in the technological field. I think that was very beautifully, and this futuristic view of the things that are going to come. Thank you so much, Jen Bhai. There are a few questions. There's a lot of enthusiasm when you were talking. People are responding a lot. Like one of the question goes like this: that how this education and employability go hand in hand. How we can do something like you cited example of the doing school where the education is actually doing. It's learning through doing unless you do something. Like we talked about a Dewey school where Dewey was asking the young kids to bring to cook in the school, how to cut the vegetables. Then if there is a carrot, Dewey would ask, from where the carrot has come. So the kid will say from the market, and what is the market, then how it goes back all the way to the farm and agriculture and knowing biology and whatnot. So I think you're right about this, that we are stuck also educationally. We have no, and people like you are trying to break those molds, forging into new directions. So I think that's very interesting. One of the questions, how this education and employability can go in hand, and if you are sucked into the Indian system of education, what as a community we can do to inculcate that kind of an attitude among our youths, among our kids, so that they learn by doing. Jan bhai.
So this is a very interesting question. Okay, and so why I think like as we Mangesh was rightly pointing out. Okay, while our children are in school, okay, right from there or right from home itself. Okay, somehow the better of that we get, and somehow we try to ensure that our children do not do some menial kind of work at home, some course at home. Okay, we deliberately try to keep them away from all these small works. Okay, and we think that that is the work of some baya or some made at home. And in this process, what we are doing is basically we are churning out our kids to be dependent for every small thing. Okay, and they are not really learning this ability to do work, do different kind of things. That their creative thinking and their abilities to do a hard work, all those like kind of like gets brushed away. So I think it should start from home, okay, before even kids go to school. So let them become, as I was telling that example of that family where Maitreyi is staying. Okay, what are they doing? I mean, those guys are millionaires. They have a big home. Okay, and both wife and husband are doctors. Okay, and they are asking their son, okay, to cook twice a week. So that means like they must be having some plan, some futuristic plan about the development of their kid. Okay, so I think we should start that from our homes itself. So I know like during our agriculture society when all our our parents or their parents were farmers. Okay, so in the farmer's family, no one sits idle. Okay, whether you go to school, not go to school, you come back from the school. I uh, as a youngster, when I was in a primary school and until my seventh class, while after school or on the Saturday and Sundays, although my father was very strict about my studies, he would let me he would let me do some work related to taking or the bullocks to river for giving them a wash. Okay, which was a very 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 productive activity, right? So it gave a lot of, it built a character. It developed a compassion towards the animals that should take care of the animals and all of that. So in other families which are like where the parents are farmers, their children get to learn a lot of things, and therefore children coming from such families are more creative. Okay, and we we as our community as engineers. Now, this is another point which I think I would have liked to share. By the way, we people, we the Bahujans, okay, we are best of the engineers and best of the managers by our DNA itself, okay. And how I came to know, I mean, like academically, I came to know about this point is during the anti-reservations riots, anti-reservation protest in 2006. There was a professor from IIT Kanpur who wrote an article. Probably Mangesh would have read that article, okay. And in that article, he says this scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and OBC people, okay, by very nature, they are best managers and best engineers. Why? Who are the best engineers? Okay, who are the best managers? The people who can give max output or optimum output within a limited resources. Okay, so who does that? Okay, it is we. We have very limited resources. We have very limited money. Okay, when we go to schools and colleges, okay, we have hardly any money, but our people are able to survive. Okay, with limited money, they are able to create something with limited money, new technology, new work, and all of that. So we are by nature itself, we are best of the creative people. We are the the producing class. We are not consumers. Okay, we are producing class. We should remember this. Now all these things, in a changing environment, whatever were our strengths all throughout the ages, we are kind of like losing that age. We should not. Okay. Let our children learn some vocations which probably other people think that no, ye to, this is a manual kind of work. No, so what? Yeah, he will learn. When he do his PhD in whatever subject, he will still have this skill with him, carpentry or whatever. So I think this should start right from home, then to the school, and then to the university. Okay, so while he is in the university, while our children are studying in an engineering college, why can't they learn? Why can't they learn graphic design? Why can't they learn website development? Why can't they learn, making robots? Why can't they learn IoT? They can learn all of this. They can start their company right away when they are in the first or the second year. Why do they have to wait for them to complete their complete degree and then find out what businesses they can do? No, you can register your company while you are in first year.
True. That's very true. That's very true. Very true. Rightly said.
You see, now in current the place where I stay in Kharghar, okay. Now I guess like there may be more than 50,000 of our people staying here. The Buddhist people around, if not 50,000, at least 20,000. Okay, and all these guys, they will be having some functions at homes, so many social programs, all of that, right? And we have a requirement of someone printing pamphlets and some brochures and all of that, because we have so many programs at home, social program. There is not a single shop or single business of a person where he can do a graphic design. He can he has a printing machine, right? So all this can be started by the college going children, right? You don't have to wait for the education to complete. So let us basically think from that perspective.
Very nice, very nice, Jan bhai. I'm going to combine these two questions into a last big question for you, and then we will conclude there. The question is, there are lots of engineers in the communities. Say for example, there are electronics engineers, and they would like to develop certain skills and certain attitudes. So there's a question that there are engineers like electronics engineers, but they don't have the employability skills. So the question goes like this: that what we can do for them, what they can do. Number one, that's one. Another, on the other hand, there is a huge mass of people who are illiterate, who have no access to education, who has not having any marketable skills. So what we do with them? What we do with that huge mass up there, and the kind of educated engineers? Sorry to combine these two questions into one, but I think they go parallelly in the things, in the scheme of things. Again, bhai.
Yeah. So for this electronics engineers, this is Mangesh. This is exactly last 15 years while I was running this hostel in Mumbai. I always face these problems and requirements from a lot of boys. Okay, all most of the boys who stayed in the hostel were engineers, and they're all unemployed people, and then they were looking for employment, and we have our limitations. Like very few of our people are actually owning some companies and holding some responsible positions in the companies. So it was very difficult to place these people. Okay, so just from that perspective, I actually came up this idea. Okay, of starting this academy that I have started, Meritorian College Academy. And then I thought about like, what are the courses that we should introduce. Okay. And then with from this overall thinking and my experience, I thought like, we should go for this high-tech courses. Okay. So one of the courses that we have produced, which is artificial intelligence with emphasis on IoT and robotics. That is the course which I would think is most suitable for this a person who asked this question. Okay, a course in IoT. IoT, I'm telling you another like robotics. Okay, like data science is another field which is going to go leaps and bounds in future. Okay, everywhere there is going to be an application of IoT, and the electronics engineers, I would say, acquire the skills in IoT, and you don't have to get employed somewhere. Okay, you start your company, start getting contracts. You walk to any small time builder, you walk to people with big houses, and they would all require these IoT equipments, for the home security. People who own this, let's say, big farmhouses, everyone would require these IoT equipments. You want to control the drip irrigation facilities in your farm while you sit at home. Who will help in that? It is the IoT experts. Okay, you just have to acquire those skills, and then there is no dearth of employment or entrepreneur opportunities in this field. So I would say, like, this is one skill I would suggest to them.
Jayant bhai, thank you so much for sparing your invaluable time with us. That was very, very, very useful conversation with you, and you have really explained to audience the status of the things today, and the kind of opportunities that we have as a community, what we can do. So, one of the things that you remarkably point out that the community that we belong to is the community of the doers. It's an action-oriented community. It has always been working hard in the farms, in the fields, and in all sort of ways. And the communities which works with the hands. It is said that they only created the technology because they faced the real problems of the life in terms of how to measure the things, how to guide the water, so on and so forth. So if at all the real history of this country is written in terms of who created those beautiful caves in Ajanta, who gave this country beautiful arts and architecture. I think that will clear out a lot of picture about the kind of technological skills and the insights that our people develop. That's very evident from the way we look at community. This is a community which brings in this large spectrum of experience, from doing things manually to mobilizing community and working with people. I remember that once I was talking to a few Black Panthers, and I couldn't identify them as Black Panthers because I was meeting them after a long time. So I asked a few of them what they are doing, and they said that we are business people. So I asked them how, what enabled you to become the business people. They said, okay, we are Panthers. We tried to mobilize a lot of people. We went to the communities. So we naturally had those skills. We know what the community needs. We know how to speak with the communities. So we just leverage those skills and brought it into a very different domain, which is not so different from the community mobilization, and we put it there, and we could successfully run some of the businesses. So I think it's as you said rightly, that it's a change of mindset and attitude. If we can have a little shift in our consciousness, as you said very rightly, and start looking at the things from the new perspective and new consciousness, I think a lot of things can be changed. We are very interested to invite you for this short analysis of our community in the future, and we are looking forward to having that interaction, that presentation from you in the future. Jayan bhai, thank you so much for having spent this beautiful time with us, and Jai Bhim to you and Jai Bhim to all the audience. I will just have one instructions for the audience. Today we at 3 o'clock we are going to have a very remarkable webinar on the reservation policy, and no less than a person of a stature of Dr. K.S. Chalam who has written a number of books into this, and he was a former member of the UPSC and also the vice chancellor of Andhra University, and has written a lot on the reservation policy. Even his research has been picked up by some of the American universities. He's a remarkable sort of an intellectual in that area. And also Dr. Sumit Baud, he acquired his PhD from the UCLA, and one of the leading scholars of our country today, who writes a lot on this. And his experience and his knowledge is going to help us to wade through this very this onslaught on the reservation policy that we see today. So join us at 3 o'clock. And Jain Bhai, thank you so much again.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
very beautiful. And we will bring you back on to Ambedkar Karwan again. Thank you so much.